Stuck in here.
This comes with this anyway.
Yes, it should be this here.
But some days I end up getting we are.
Well,
Yeah. We only have a couple minutes late. Come right on the dot. You know what we did do last time was really nice is ask people. What grades they
yeah, we
took.
should get new last
Kind of
time.
bobbed in.
Yeah, sorry. Because we were
We all
people.
do.
We all
Let's do that
We all
this
do,
time.
but I didn't, that's why I asked who was in there. Yeah, we should. Let's give her people.
Yeah. A few more footsteps. See that someone beating you down the hallway. Come see us.
Oh, really?
Yes,
and everyone just went to him. She's got bright. And I said, what? Texting it back for the parent. She kept saying to me, she said, I haven't started. I haven't started to make sure I tell her.
Yeah.
I don't text anyone else.
I honestly don't text anyone. My husband does, the kids do. If we need to get a message to the kids, I'll just yell over to Gary. You need to text Stephanie. I don't do it.
I don't even.
It's not in my repertoire. I'm sure that it's.
Because you know why? Because kids now text so much that they're starting to write a little text, which is so dry.
That's what I think.
Like OMG is a word. No, sorry. You know, BFF. No, sorry. Write it out. Where are we going next?
Did you guys get this?
Yeah. There's only 3 of us. I think everybody's up, a lot of people were upstairs. So there are only 3 of us in there.
It sounds like you guys are having fun.
Yeah.
Did you find the zone?
I did. There's a door right
sensory
there.
one
You
next
stand out and
door.
hold it up.
Yeah.
You get signal.
I have a lot of my parents don't even have.
Yeah, I think we're ready.
That would be awesome.
Inference.
We'll see. It's going to hall and we'll
Yeah.
see where we go. Well, thank you for coming. I think this is probably our group. Looks like 2 o'clock. We'll begin now. The 3 of us are all literacy coaches. We'll introduce ourselves, and I would love for us all to introduce so we find out who you are and what grade levels you teach too.
So, I'm Carrie Rickerby. I am the literacy coach at Lakeview.
I'm Betsy Thixton, and I am the literacy coach at Arlington Heights.
And I'm Chris Freeman, and I'm currently literacy coach at Highland Park. So welcome. And let's just-
Nancy Reynolds, 1st and 2nd grade.
I'm Mary Jean Capiello and I'm in special ed in Fort Creek.
Shane Gibson, 5th grade, Templeton.
Lisa Sub, 4th grade, then 3rd.
Sarah Shepherd, 1st grade, Unionville.
Krista Donhauer, kindergarten, Arlington Heights.
Jean Hollinger, special ed, K-3, Highland Park.
Nikki Young, 5th grade, Grandview.
Dawn Cartwright, inclusion, Grandview.
It's fun. I don't know about you, but I hear names sometimes and I can't get the faces and the names and the schools and all that together, so I really like this, especially in a group where it's small enough for me to actually retain that for a little bit of time. That's nice.
Until the next meeting.
Yeah. I've seen you somewhere. Well, thank you for coming. All righty. Well, we have also chosen some pieces from Ellen Keene. I know this morning Marilyn relied on Ellen Keene for a good portion of her presentation. But Ellen Keene to me speaks so eloquently about how she's thinking, how we need to get students thinking, and how we need to get students thinking more deeply. And then she gives us ideas on how we might be able to do that. So we have copied some vignettes that we would like for you to look at. That's what we're doing first, right? Yes.
So if you'll take
Suddenly
one.
I lost my.
That's okay. And pass it around. We're gonna have you kind of do some readers theater with the person sitting next to you, and if you're not by someone, you can do it in groups of 3 or looks like we have an odd number. So
as you're doing those and kind of walking through those different scenarios, just go ahead and kind of you either put yourself in the student's position or the teacher's position or both, and just kind of think through it through that lens.
This comes from, actually the back of a book that Ellen Keene wrote called To Understand. We've got a copy of it up here if you'd like to see it later. And within that, she's showing us some of the language that she uses with students in order to keep them talking, thinking, what she does to prod them on, what she does to get them into the kinds of language that she sees that they need to use. So we've picked out 4 little vignettes for this Reader's Theater, and I'll just let you pair up with somebody close to you and go through those and be thinking as you're going about what strikes you about the language or what strikes you about what she's prompting the children.
Teacher, or I do not care.
All right, so go with someone.
Let me take
Yes.
this.
I don't know if there's a group of three or not.
Okay.
Time in silence to choose those words here.
Marcus, did you say, I wonder if you were thinking of any more. I know you're not thinking of more.
Marcus, share your knowledge with us. If you were here thinking of any more,
I know that what Marcus is looking at is time is silence. Think of other stuff.
and they say, I don't know.
I so respect kids like Marcus who take the time to think. Look at Marcus. Now that's the
What
way
Marcus
Marcus
is
is.
most
As
used
long
now
as
is
Marcus is
time
silent,
think of other
consider
images
other
that will
images
help
that
them
will help
understand. I started to take their time to see.
Nope.
Look at Marcus. Now that's based on the interview. All Marcus is trying to start to consider other images that will help them better understand.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
Okay, so now,
You can be teacher.
I thought that too. I saw the second you bring to fall. Right? Let's all give Marcus the time to first consider other images.
Do you want us to do all of these?
Put it down?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear you amplify your comments. Can you talk about exactly what you think about his comments?
I
don't know, I wouldn't feel
I'm
comfortable
sorry,
with
this
someone.
is Jamal. That means with what she not leads because
I would move on and say, I really know sometimes
Is that first
I go to someone
I
else.
was Marcus, who didn't have a lot.
Sure.
My lines are very small.
And I think she when she's feeling once in my dad, I think that helps.
So Chris, you agree with Jamal that it's part of the next job is to regulate us to understand the essential connection better?
You're gonna be moved.
I'd like to hear you amplify your
Okay.
comments.
I thought that too. Guys,
You agree with Jamal, that part of the writer's job.
You might want to
We're
stop
writing
this.
away.
It's like
Well,
you're
I
very
think
good
the
at
Bob
it. You're
Ryan
very
thing
good.
is
They
like a little nightmare
And they
for
were
you
doing
guys.
And they don't want to
She
do
got
that.
worried about that. Well, that's fine.
No, like,
Yeah,
tell
she's
me
really
about
my
that.
dad.
You might want to start with
I just think.
I agree with you. Right,
I need to go outside.
because
I haven't worked with him.
I understand that if you're self-sufficient, can you tell me how you understand
Can you imagine how you study to feel the cold, wet grass?
I know you're not honestly saying you wish
I get
I have a few students who didn't think self-sufficient, but she walked to the church house outside, or something like that, and I worked.
If I was a girl, when I was young,
Nope.
The what you were, right?
I think I got it, I had to go outside to go to the bathroom. Well, really what I thought was that I was worried that, you know, my kids were when I got up and covered, that I was about kidding.
Because it allows
Then I
you to
thought,
imagine what the
so
kid-
the next time, it's like, and she had the same,
Taking a nap only once a week, because that would make me ask me what I do. I would make sure
I feel more comfortable.
The way she writes,
Yeah.
you feel like you're in the water.
But I like this one, when they're doing writing. Yeah, you're trying to do the stars and wishes and like trying to. That one, the first one. Yeah.
One of the kids were going to school, her kids had a field trip and she was a student teacher going on a field trip in their class and doing rock, so she went back and she told me, I was like, oh,
Okay, go ahead, no, I
Plus,
didn't
I
know.
had a student teacher in there, so like, but help me take care of it.
Great. No, no, you're
Tell
sure.
me if I'm restating this correctly, but I believe what you said is that when you imagine this, like,
Sounds like we're just
Okay, Rachel.
All right, so from those 4 vignettes, I hope you got some of the flavor of Ellen Keene. Is there anything there that struck you, anything she said? I think we'll focus more on what she said than what the children said, or what they, I guess if we focused on the children, sometimes it's what they didn't say. And how did Ellen Keene get them out of that? Is there anything that struck you, any line from any of these vignettes that seemed important to you?
Well, there's one that I use all the time, and it must have come from her because I didn't invent it, but, it's when the kid says, you ask them a question, he says, I don't know. Well, if you did know. And that really, it's amazing when they say, they answer you at that, when you say that back. So it really does work. It's a very effective strategy.
It is an effective strategy. I told a story like this in the last session. There was a student in Fairview and we were sitting in a circle, an unbroken circle, and he was a kid who just loves to always have his hand up and yelling and, you know, I've got to talk, but when it was time to really say what he had his hand up for, he said he didn't know or he forgot. That's the first time I used the line, well, Michael, I know that you don't know, but if you did know, what would you say? And he said it all. Well, that's remarkable. That actually worked. And you see that Ellen Keene has that sort of language within these vignettes, not each one of them is, so that's a good one to try. It's, you've seen it, I've seen it, it really does work. Anything else that struck you about this one?
I'm just kind of curious, some of the verbiage that she uses, she obviously had to pre-talk at to the kids, where it's like, formulate my thinking and amplify.
She's telling them that because she wants them to use that, absolutely. Other pieces that she's written, she is very much about honoring children, respecting children, and speaking to them in that sort of way. They're able to do it, let's do that.
So she doesn't talk differently to different grade levels?
No.
Not sure about that, she might.
Cause I can't say some of this to really little kids, you know, obviously.
Formulate my thinking and
Yeah.
amplify
They just
amplify
do.
my words, right.
So that's what I was wondering. I like the way she uses that vocabulary, but I'm wondering how to do it with younger kids, you know.
I know that she says to, I heard her say to second graders who she'd never seen before, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would you say? So she does use that sort of language with them. As far as the formulate and the amplify, I don't know, but it could be she works it into that. It would be good, that's a good question, I'm going to see if I can find the answer to that somewhere.
It's kind of like in the daily life, we use the word stamina.
Exactly.
We use stamina in kindergarten and they don't, and it's kind of the same thing if it becomes like those trigger words of, what do I mean when I say amplify, or what do I mean when I say build up your stamina? Once you use it so many times in your everyday, especially with
Right.
things like this when you're reading books, they'll get it.
And here's an example of it, and so we just go on from there. Could be. I'll see if I can find out if she makes a difference there. You know, she'll be here this summer, so maybe we can preload that question before she comes.
I
I could see though, like you would teach it as a mini lesson. Let's do this together, we're gonna think aloud and do it, and then I'll use this when I conference with you, you know, during Daily 5. And I think we had that conversation with some of these, vignettes on the back about how this wouldn't work whole group, or it would be hard for my class to sit here when I have this conversation with one student. And, you know, you have to think about, you can use that in a small group, you can use it in a one-on-one conference, a reading conference with Daily 5, you know, or how could you fit that with a whole group discussion? So, just, you know, different ways to think about how to use this language.
Although I did see her work with the second graders, and there were, wasn't 20 or 30 children, there might have been 15 around the table. And when one student was trying to think, and she had prompted him, I know you forgot, but if you didn't forget, and he still wasn't saying very much. So I believe there was some sort of hint to this language in one of the vignettes. She said, you know, look at Jean. I can tell she's thinking really hard. You know, when people are thinking really hard, they get that look in their eyes. I can tell that she's really thinking very hard, and so she needs this quiet time. And so we're going to honor that. We're going to be quiet while Jean sits and thinks about the words she needs to say to tell us exactly what she thinks is important. I did see her do that with a lot of children, and they did sit there in silence, uncomfortable. You know, it's uncomfortable to have that much silence, but she had prompted it by that, and everyone sat there and gave that kid the time to speak, and it was really eloquent when he did. He wasn't off the hook. He had to say something, and it had to be worth saying, and he really was thinking about it. So I did see her use that sort of language also with them. But the formulate and the amplify, I didn't hear that one right off. So we'll find out about that.
Might be an academic vocabulary lesson.
True, drawing Marzano. All righty. Anything else that you noticed on there? Anything else you'd like to talk about on that? That's just to set the stage.
Yeah.
It's not always what you teach, but it's how you approach it, how you try to get students to go deeper and deeper into what they're thinking in order to get them to really make some difference on their comprehension. Well, we have drawn upon several books, and you will get a packet later that has some resources in it. One resource is Strategies that Work, and Marilyn showed that one this morning. Another one, Catching Readers Before They Fall. They have some really interesting pieces in them. Just so you can think about two things: what students do when they're trying to determine importance, and then also what it might sound like if you're prompting a student, and what it might sound like if a student is starting to talk about what he found was important in a text. So those will be in the packet for you. In Strategies that Work, there were 4 pieces that students go through this type of activity when they're trying to determine importance. They'll look at the text, they'll look at the visuals that are there for them, just as we did this morning in the book of manatees. So when you were categorizing things and looking through that text as a resource, some people were using the words from the text, some were using those maps from the text. My little group was using both of those, trying to determine, so they know they're important pieces in there. And they'll go to features that are in nonfiction text and use that as a way to determine what's important for them to remember. They'll look around as they're reading and find big ideas, and they'll find details, and they sift and sort through that to determine what really is the important thing to remember from this piece. They'll also look at what they already know as compared with what the author is telling them, and try to decide what is the author now trying to let me know is important, whether I agree with that or not. And that's the last piece. So students will start formulating opinions by what they've read, what's important to remember here, and their opinions may change as they're colored by what they've read in a text, and trying to determine the important pieces of that text.
And start beginning to make sure that their opinions that they've developed are based on the evidence in the text as well. So, do that.
Alrighty.
So we wanted to make sure that we gave you some strategies right up front that you can take and do in your classrooms tomorrow. So we tried to plan really from K6 and all of this. So there's lots of different variations on some of the activities we're going to go through right now.
So you are getting a sheet, and we would like you to take a minute or two to write down what you think is important about a spoon or a daisy, or, the rain.
Just do the ones that kind of
yes, that pop out to you.
pop out to you.
In order, if you
And
have a
We have extra copies if you wanna write on this one, we can give you an extra.
I'll give you like another 30 seconds. Try to make this the right time.
Multitask. I forgot
Are you asking us what,
But
if
you-
what it does to us, what it
Just what's
evokes?
If you had to boil it down to just something, what would be the important thing about whatever that picture item is?
So you can keep jotting notes. I'm gonna start reading The Important Book by Margaret Wise Brown. And you can do this in lots of different ways. We're just showing you one way to do it right now. So The Important Book by Margaret Wise Brown. And on the title page it says, the important thing about glass is that you can see through it. The important thing about a spoon is that you eat with it. It's like a little shovel. You hold it in your hand. You can put it in your mouth. It isn't flat, it's hollow. And it spoons things up. But the important thing about a spoon is that you eat with it. The important thing about a daisy is that it is white. It is yellow in the middle. It has long white petals and bees sit on it. It has a ticklish smell. It grows in green fields. And there are always lots of daisies. But the important thing about a daisy is that it is white. The important thing about rain is that it is wet. It falls out of the sky and it sounds like rain. And it makes things shiny. And it does not taste like anything. And it is the color of air. But the important thing about rain is that it is wet. We're going to stop right there. And there are lots of different things that you could do with the important book, or how to use this, a sheet like this. You know, you could have your students write a few things, share, come up with one or two things. You can make some lists about what is important about a spoon, and then read the book, and then compare what your class thought, what the author thought. Why is that important? Why is what we thought important? Why do you think the author thought this was important? And there are lots of ways to use the important book in your classroom too. I know we talked about, we're kind of a good mix. I used to teach kindergarten. Carrie taught second. Chris has taught intermediate. You taught third. I did this with my kindergartners, and we did it at the end of the year, and we talked about what was the important thing about kindergarten. And each child chose one thing. We put together a book for next year's class. You could do it with a science lesson, a social studies lesson, a holiday, anything that strikes your fancy. It's a great book to use to.
I just have to tell
Yes.
my sappy story. We did this lesson and then they chose something that wasn't in the book that was important to them and kind of went through, and it was a writing piece that they went through all the steps, from pre-write to publish, and the assignment was over and the holidays came and I got mail actually at home, and I opened it up and it was from one of my families, and a parent had taken the piece that her child had written in my class. It was all about hugs and what was important about hugs, and they had designed it into their family Christmas card and then sent it to me, and it was like gushing. So, I think it says a lot about really respecting what the students have to say and their important ideas.
We had an intermediate class at my former school who had done some writing on this at the end of the year. So the important thing about their school, or the important thing about their grade level, and that was their presentation to the school at the end of the year. It was really very heartfelt and nice. So they really thought through about paring down to the important things they needed to tell in just a few little words. You could do it by topic, and actually be a way to sort of build some background to see what kind of schema kids already had about a topic before you began, and then maybe at the end pre and post assessment, perhaps, or pre and post activity. Just what do you see as important about these concepts?
Great. So the next piece, and we kind of wanted to tie some of the other work that we've done as a cohort together. And when Rosinski came, he had kind of the idea of word harvesting. Hopefully some of you have kind of tried to do that in your classroom, because it's such a great strategy for so many things. And honestly, it really ties well with determining importance as well. Because you could take a piece, and if you flip on the back side of that blue sheet, we simply printed the Pledge of Allegiance. It's something that, you know, the children say each and every day, but do they honestly know what is going on there, and understand all of the words? And so we wanted just to kind of touch base and say, look, the work that Rosinski was doing was kind of determining importance, because you have those conversations with students about the vocabulary, and then they come, you know, when they're able to share out and they come to that common ground, what were the actual important words? So that led me to kind of us to think about the mosaic of thought, and in there, it's mentioned, you know, that you can have students pick out from the text, whether it's a poem, a song, whatever it is, a short piece, the sentence, the phrase, and the word. And so that's what you see at the back on that blue sheet where it says, try this. And we'd actually like you to try this. It's formal, it's written up, but I think it's important to teach students explicitly what you want and how to share out. And I think Marilyn had mentioned that this morning. But if you want it done well and they're really going to learn from each other, you have to just lay it out there on the line. So this was one kind of protocol, if you like, that does that. Now, I don't necessarily expect a kindergarten classroom to go exactly through this, so you can make it work for yourself, but you can definitely have them pick out sentences, phrases, words together. So that's what we'd like you to do, actually. That quote that you got when you came first in on that fancy paper there. On the border sheet. Yep, right there. That says what we'd like you to do is just to kind of read through that article. Chris can talk a little bit about where that piece came from.
Well, that actually came from To Understand. So it was from the prelude. Other pieces we pulled are from the very back of the book, but from the very beginning, she sets the stage for how she's thinking and how she's directed the information she has for you in this book. So this is another Ellen King, which you can tell we pull from quite a bit here. So that's the piece. You have a couple paragraphs from there for looking through to find sentence, phrase, word that seem important to you.
finishing your thought. So as you look on the blue sheet, it specifically says try to do it in rounds where you share the sentence, the phrase, and the word, and everyone gets that opportunity to share, kind of in a non-threatening manner. So if you don't mind, here's you can either share with the people you were just talking with, or if you want to change your perspective, which is often good, you can get up and move, and we'll let that up to you. But just kind of go through the sentence, the phrase, and the word that you actually pulled out of those with a partner or two. You don't have to do it all at once. We are lulling them into a deep sleep.
About that time of the day for that second coming off.
Yeah.
Maybe getting up and going to my coffee.
Phrase within that in a word.
We'll see which one did you pick, Jean?
But the one that stood out was the promise to help children.
Is that your sentence?
Last one
Yeah.
was
My sentence was.
All children can make contributions.
There are a lot of
Well, I had one that first session, I was positive, that's what I would have said, and then as I looked at this one, I changed my mind. So, the second one I came up with, I believe that we can extinguish the notion that some kids are going to make it intellectually and other kids just aren't. That's the one.
I think I definitely, I promised, extinguished,
We've done this.
greatness,
And reshape it.
women and children. Those are just points that extinguish the notion.
So,
Leave that kind of stuff.
Yeah, everything I did seems to be pretty very.
Yeah, really cool. So no one really does.
Well, my phrase was provoke silence and witness.
Made you think. If one person can make it, help me out. Powerful. I have heard people that we do all the time.
It's like, I think as a
Yeah, I've heard that.
unfortunately, they walk in,
Unfortunately,
kind of tell, it doesn't take very long, the first day of school, maybe to kind of start sorting by these the ones that are just, you know, they're low. I mean, I can
got the
tell.
book then,
It's
I
all
was texting
like
it,
difficult.
and we had a discussion about it.
You don't want to think that, I think all yours are, I think the highest for them, but it's gonna be on, you know, it's gonna be for them, if they overcome, it's gonna be a great obstacle, you know, they're gonna have to work
Just
hard,
have to
really hard.
Yes.
That'd be the odds.
I hold them in very high esteem.
And we have to hold that promise.
But I understand.
That's what we're gonna do in history, obviously, we're gonna all those kids.
Yes. Mike knows strong. But you have to
And I try to let it, like, obviously, all the kindergarten, I try to have it all those, you know, even if I see that, I'm not gonna give up on them and say, okay, I'm not even gonna try, because you're well, you know, I don't think we're that way. You do think this is.
And yes, so he has that right room for each kid.
Like, even if I hear
pull them up.
They have that, and my career started, she said, you know, he started out at our school and got into a fight, his parents threw him out, and then they went to my
One of the teachers in the last session said when they do this activity in her class.
Meeting for the first one.
I heard somebody say in the last session, when they do this activity in her class, she does something similar. They take all these important sentences and post them, and it ends up very much like a poem. So we've got all the important points listed there. That was a really nice way to draw it together and honor what everyone had selected. Not that you would use this piece with children, but we wanted you to go through this process.
And in our packet, we put some things that hopefully, like tomorrow, if you wanted to try this, you could do besides the pledge on the back.
We're gonna move on to, we're passing out just a piece of notebook paper right now, but, we're gonna talk about Cornell notes, which, is anyone familiar with those? Yes, it is. And this was developed by, an education professor at Cornell, in the 50s, and it's a way to, listen to or read through text, and draw your own summaries. So, what you're going to do on your paper is, and I noticed Dawn just
Don't
I don't have
hold
mine.
yourself, please, Vanna.
But on the bottom of your page, you'll draw, or you can draw just a line across the bottom, like a third of the way up. Just draw a line right across the bottom. And then, at the top, just make it like an upside down T. So draw a line down to that first line you drew. And what you do here is on, let me see, I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I always get this backwards, but on the left, you write, keywords that you hear or that stick out to you, or if you have any questions, Chris is going to read to you. So if things come up or pop in your mind, you're gonna write keywords and questions on the left. On the right, you're going to take notes. So whatever you think is important, what do you hear that is meaningful to you? And then once you're done taking your notes, on the bottom you would either draw a conclusion or summarize your notes. And you could do that in lots of different ways. You could do it right after you take your notes and after you've heard the text, or you could come back to it the next day, review what you have written, and then draw your summary after that. So Chris is going to read to you. You're going to do this activity right now.
Okay. And the book we've chosen, Coming to America, The Story of Immigration, looks like a nonfiction, but it really tells the story of immigration starting way back as people were coming across Bering Strait from different places they came. But we're hopping in just as Ellis Island has been opened up. So here's what the words say right after this Ellis Island beginning. Inspectors from the island boarded the ships at anchor to check the passengers. Wealthy passengers traveling first class were usually allowed to leave the ship right away. The inspectors looked for signs of contagious disease among the others. Those who were ill sometimes stayed aboard the ship or were sent to other islands to recover. Those who seemed healthy were taken to Ellis Island. On the busiest days, so many ships arrived in New York Harbor that there were long waits just to get to Ellis Island. Sometimes the wait was so long that people had to live aboard the ship for a few extra days. Once on the island, there was more waiting. With thousands arriving each day, long lines formed everywhere. First, the immigrants were given a quick examination by doctors. Those with health problems were marked with colored chalk. The doctors would examine these persons more closely. Some people were kept on the island for observation. After 1911, Ellis Island had its own hospital to treat the sick. Sometimes immigrants had permanent health problems that would make it hard for them to work. This often meant that they would be sent back to their native country. That most of the new arrivals passed inspection and moved on to the next step. Now the immigrants were asked a long list of questions. Inspectors asked their names, where they were from, and how much money they had. Since most of the immigrants did not speak English, they needed help in understanding and answering the questions. Translators did what they could to help the inspectors and newcomers understand one another. Even though it was difficult, most managed somehow to answer all the questions. Mothers often spoke for children who might be too little or too scared to speak. The immigrants had to show that they would work hard and they would stay out of trouble. Usually the ordeal was over within the day. When they received their entry cards, at last the immigrants could officially enter their new country. And finish up the notes and then a summary. The idea is that once students have a page of notes, they would summarize just that page.
I also think even sharing before you come write your summary would be a good idea, just
Sure
to
could.
see to make sure that you're.
So you can do that now if you want.
We talked about, especially in the primary grades, that then the note section could be little pictures and things as well. You wouldn't have to, it would be written word.
There again, this text had a lot of details. It's a matter of looking through all those details and coming up with what's the big idea that will help us out.
The last one has a little page on it and that.
have any questions or anything about some of this, hopefully you've been able to come up with something that you could take back if you wanted to and do tomorrow. I mean, that was our goal, so let us know if that's not the case, please. We can't change it for the next group, but
But we like the feedback.
but we would like the feedback.
I put some pieces in the packet that would, we hope also would be something you can take back and use if not tomorrow, in the near future.
We're gonna walk you through it just a little bit, just so you know what we gave you, as well, so if you don't mind flipping through this with us. The first part is the pieces from these different books that we, have been through, so stuff that Chris talked about from strategies at work, you know, when you determine importance, this is how you do it, what it means, what it looks like. On the back, there's a book list, so some great books that, is not an inexhaustive list. But most of them are over there on the table too, so if you know, feel free to look at some of them. You know, 90%, or actually all the ones I brought, I got at the public library. I'm gonna have some of them, but I wanted to see if they were there, and they are. You can get them at the public library. Great ones to use for determining importance. On the bottom, there are some points of how decisions are made in text, and that is from Mosaic of Thought, which is the book that we received at our last literacy cohort. The next page is some quotes and different parts from some speeches and just from different presidents over the years. And you know, with President's Day coming up, I try to think of some things that you could use right away in your classroom. So you could pull out words, phrases, you know, determine, you know, just try to determine what's important from those. On the back of that are a couple songs and a poem for Earth Day. I thought, you know, it's a fun way to, you know, you could listen to some of these songs, and pick out the key words and phrases, or, you know, why is the author saying this? What is important about this song?
I think the key is what Marilyn hit on this morning, is the fact that anything that has a text that has some content to it that you can address with your students is gonna be perfect for it. So even though we've given you this list, that's just a starting point. I mean, you probably have your own favorites that you would say, well, why did you guys add this one? And that would be perfectly fine if you told us that.
Okay, we're getting the gist. Okay, the primary strategy pages, she does not call them worksheets, she wants students to understand that the page you're looking at called Getting the Gist is a strategy page. And it's used at the beginning of scaffolding, so you can help students get organized, understand what it is they're supposed to be doing. And later, they should not need this support, but this is a way to start your teaching. So this book is by Sharon Tversky, and it's for primary teachers. It's from students, it's K to 3. Her idea is the comprehension is not on equal base with phonics and word study and all. It's the reason why we do the phonics and the word study and all of that. So she puts comprehension at the top. So that first one, the Getting the Gist, comes from there. The idea is at the first box, they would summarize some text there. And in 15 words or fewer, they would write a summary. So we're not talking about everything that's on that text. Every single little detail was told to you. What are the important things from there? Next box, they would took another page, another chapter, another piece of text, and write a new summary there. Now, on the back side of that is Getting the Gist for older students, and this one comes from, it's Linda Hoyt and 3 other authors on solutions for reading comprehension. So it has more sophisticated activities that a student needs to do. Looking through what is the gist, what's the big idea, what's the most important piece to bring out of that. Then, back in the primary version, we have main events for fiction and main events for nonfiction. Then we have for intermediate students, let's put in there in kind of an unusual order, but that's okay, organizing a summary. Keeping in mind, I don't know about your school, we're putting a lot of emphasis now, especially with Brzezinski's, those assessments on retelling and really giving what he says are robust details. So we're working on getting them to pull out the details. But when we're looking at determining importance, we're asking the opposite of that. Okay, let's put all those details together. What's the main idea? So it's two different ways of looking at the text they've read. They have to know what it is they're being asked to do at that particular time. So these pieces are meant to help students and teachers figure out what they know and where they are, maybe on the scale of understanding. Then we have an open-ended piece here for students, especially those kindergartners have done this, primary students. What's the important thing? What do you need to remember from a book? We did this as a culminating activity for the other side with kindergarten class once. And they drew a rich illustration and had some room here for writing too, what they needed to remember as the big idea, a summary from the other side. Fairly rich book. That's when you pick a book, it needs to have a good set of richness to it, a real story to it, some really good ideas behind it. The ideas here behind Nancy, the books behind Nancy are good examples of those books. But we left a blank here so students could write in the text they were using. And
The next
Mary,
one
tell
is
us about
the
this.
2-word strategy, and I think really we put this in the packet as a follow-up to the activity we had done earlier with the Ellen King quote. Just, particularly kind of keeping primary students in mind. Could you do it with intermediate, of course, but at least it was a little bit of a simpler version that you could use right away.
Then we have pieces from one of the very books you were given today, Ellen King's Assessing Thinking Strategies, and you really are doing that with that book. You aren't assessing what they remember from the text. You're assessing what was important from there. This one has to be important, obviously, as the determining importance, but she has one of these for all the strategies. The written version, the oral version, those are the same questions. The rubric is the same, you use it for either one of those. But you're really assessing, how did this strategy help you understand that text? How do you have a better understanding of what you've read because you've used the strategy of determining importance?
We forgot to put the rubric inside. We got
Right.
mixed up on
Rubric's
copies,
loose.
and so that's why it's loose, so apologies.
Now, one of the books we brought is Stand Tall, Molly Lou Mellon, and there actually is a story there, but the pictures, there's one of that's just totally wacky that kids love for sure. They get so distracted. Lisa and I were talking at the beginning, there's another book over here, that the illustrations are so cool that it's distracting. It's a little difficult to get to what the story's really telling you. So I often word process a story. So our first work with it, when we're really getting to the meaning of what it is a word process version before they get into the illustrations. I know some people prefer that they look at the illustrations along with it. Just depends on where you are with your students and what you need them to do. So you have a couple books here that are word process. One is Stand Tall, Molly Lou Mellon, and the other one is Salt Hands.
And I also like that because it ties into a strategy that we're not talking about, but the imagery and stuff like that. So by eliminating some of the pictures, you can tie that in as well, so.
And then, drawing one last time upon Ellen King, you have at the back of your packet
We don't get
some
paid by her,
quotes.
do we?
Pardon?
We don't even get paid
No,
by
we
her.
don't, but I do encourage you, if you're coming in the summer, at least my experience with her was that she is well worth hearing firsthand. She's just got a really eloquent, quiet way about telling you some very important things. Well, these were quotes I heard her say to second grade students. She worked with a group of students she had never seen before. Those students came in and plunked themselves down at this table, and she just started right in with them on some text, and they were using some strategies. But within her talk with them, these are some quotes that I heard her say, and I wrote them down. Liked them so well, I've used them quite a bit with staffs from different buildings. So look through there, see what you think, see if there's some you might want to keep in mind, one that especially speaks to you, one you might be able to use with students when you go back to school.
Yeah, you might wanna think of a specific student. When you're going through, you're going, I'm using this tomorrow.
I'm going there next.
We're next to the noisy room, that's right. They've got some fun things going on there. Earlier they had music, I don't know why we didn't hear the
I
music.
don't know, they mixed it up.
Well, each time I look at these, I do something a little bit different, but I really, at this point, like this one, almost in the middle. Think about what you think is most important. while I read the rest of the book, see if it changes. I like that, you know, we're still engaged in that, don't make up your mind too early. All right, those little things.
We are passing out just a kind of a reflection sheet or exit slip. And we want you to draw what was most important for you from today. So you're practicing this strategy as well. We've given you lots of different options and hopefully some things that, you know, will speak to you or have spoken to you or that you're able to take back to your classroom and use right away. And you feel free if you don't want to fill this out right now, it's totally fine, but if you do, if it's helpful to you, you know, we'd love the feedback as well. But it's mainly for you to be reflective and think about, you know, what can I use, what has spoken to me today. We hope we've given you some tools to take with you, take back.
Well, thank you for coming. We were back in such a tiny little room before, and we thought, no one's going to find us. It was nice to get
Did you guys even know there was a little room down the end of that hallway? We were in it.
We made it very cozy though, it was going to be lovely. As far as book choices, you can almost always count on Eve Bunting. Oh my, so what a lot of hers in today. I'm sure there's several of those on the list we gave you. Do you have your plans made for your next session?
The next session's April, right? The final one?
Oh, well, I was thinking the third one today, but yeah, I think so.
Is it on a Thursday or a Tuesday? I liked having it
let's
the
see,
same day, cause you
Lisa.
could use the template you
For
used
your
before.
subplans.
That's true, that's true.
Do we know what day
April
it is?
26th, right?
Okay.
I think it's a.
I had a look at it on Thursday.
It is a Thursday.
I think it's a Thursday.
Then I won't look.
See how I was bragging on our boy that left your school? Was at a funeral and he stole from me.
At a funeral?
For in the classroom,
Oh,
I've got.
okay.
Thank you. Right, well, more on that. Well, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
He was yours at your school. Your guys rock good.
But enough to just get the taste right.
But I knew Bryce was.
Pardon? But it's for you to use that as, oh yes, I can do that with my students. When I get back to school.
I know everybody's tired. You guys were boring. I think everybody just, you sit and listen so long. None of us are used to doing that. I was teasing Neil, I'm like, I'm doing your job wrong. He's gonna sit in meetings all day. He rolls his eyes. I'm like,
It's always the same when you get up and you're like,
I know. We get a different face.
take care, sweetie.
You too.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
This looks familiar. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I was like, what am I gonna put my stuff in today? I'm like, oh, I forgot that daily five thing.
You know when you come, you're gonna get more books, more things, so I just didn't have a bag. Alright. Well,
Thanks for coming, Nancy.
Oh, dang.
okay, one more time. I'm gonna put these back.
Thank you.
Go.
Here, I'm doing.
Are you doing
Thanks
that?
for coming.
Those are all finished, but how many do you think you need? Not as many as I have here. And I was trying to clean up.
I have.
It was like a teaching day, you know, the day drags on. But I was always one of these people at lunch, I wouldn't eat until I kind of had cleaned out.
This had to be better.
I couldn't handle it. Like, it could be as messy as it wanted while we were in there.
If she wanted it picked back up.
Okay, is that good?
I think so, like 15 maybe.
So, yeah. So, yeah, because, you know, really, I think we should take these
they need these answers, because they don't know what all this silence is about. Hello, how are you? Good. So, I'll give you a piece of paper.
Okay.
Sure.
It's okay.
Okay.
Hey, how's that addendum work for
Have all look at it once. Have you?
Yeah, I looked over at it when you were talking, cause it was behind my eyesight, and I went, well, you've done a really good job. For the 6
Are you
today.
just sitting here or?
But
Let's
I,
remember
you know what,
to
if
do
they
that.
noticed it,
Yeah.
we very clearly told people what we're on, so if they're really getting easy.
They can refer to it. I think that's swords will work for other people.
These are swords, right? They're just loose on the tables.
I was looking right by it, and I thought,
That is what was important
They
to
call
do.
that back and.
if we just wanted something, it's good for us to do that.
What I'm wondering,
Now, do these have this with it now too?
Those do, okay. Oh,
Okay, now, no, they're
these
fine
the
now.
wet ones?
Well, I don't know.
Don't worry about my goodness.
This one's fine, this one's clear on this way. It's okay.
That's a very common.
I was like, excuse me? You know what can I say to someone? She's a crack killer. Is that what she said?
Oh, wow, that's funny.
Cover yourself up. She's very direct.
That's, yeah.
I don't understand, like, I've talked to her, and she didn't get cold, and I said,
You just got comfortable.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I don't think they want this.
I mean, I said, where you going? How are you?
Isn't that great? Yes.
Stan, has the
Thank
one
you.
now. He's 3 months old.
Oh my gosh, I guess I didn't know
This
she was
big.
one.
Yes.
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Ah, sweet little guy.
They're playing.
Thank you. He just loves that one. Yeah, we just mind your phone calls. Yeah. You swear?
I don't like it.
Before we told today.
Oh.
Daddy loves the cars, and not necessarily so much for us.
I guess it's
And one
like
is
it's
very
very
good.
No,
Your days
one
never
is
the
that-
same.
The other one is
keep
Blake,
it by
which is
3:45.
Kitty.
Can I come in
She's
and
our
stuff?
8-year-old.
I
So
just
that's
gotta go
her
back, cause it is
stepbrother.
club.
So her middle name is Blake, and they want to have a
It's,
And another thing that's special about that, that's
our 9th year at CEF. We have over 100 kids there, which is say, what's the story about Jesus? So, I got to be there. My middle schoolers in there, I have middle schoolers that come back, they ride the bus home. They get there about 3:45, get there
First son, first grade son.
Yes.
And Chris, I saw your son here watching the cheer.
How
How often?
So is mine.
Where is he?
She would be for 10 years.
Yeah. Hey there.
All of our classes are so many kids.
Oh, no, you make it better, right? Now we understand why. I'm so glad they're here for you to.
I don't know what She's a lady.